We continue our discussion on the cabinet reshuffle as we preempt the induction of the ministers a little bit later on. But we joined on the line by Mdumiseni Ntuli, KZN ANC spokesperson, Professor Berry Hanyani, political analyst and Northwest University professor, Kenny Kunene, socialite and businessman, Professor Keith Engel, CEO of the Institute of Tax Professionals, and Sfiso Mahlangu, resident political analyst in the studio. Gentlemen, just looking at, of course, what we're talking about in terms of the EFF and the DA, the impeachment, suggesting that this is very imminent. And we've known before that what Juju tweets tends to be a reality in most cases. Kenny, what do you make out of it?
Julius always believed that he has ANC leaders and members in the palm of his hand because he knows so much about them. And obviously the relationships that he has are always there. So he will be fed information every now and then. But what I want to talk about just quickly is the issue of the hypocrisy and that we see amongst these people. You just mentioned that ANN7 journalists were attacked and abused at a march. Remember, that march happened after the press conference of Pravin Gordhan, and he himself started it in the press conference by making some insinuations about ANN7. He cried for having been analyzed in the morning, during the day, and in the evening. So it's not a matter of principle, it's personal. The president has never complained when he is analyzed and criticized on 50 radio stations, 3 television stations every day. So for Pravin to complain about one TV channel, it's really some sort of hypocrisy. He's not special. Number 2, Julius's hatred of Cyril Ramaphosa, from what I know, is so visible that you could cut it with a blade. From the time when he promised that he was going to overturn the disciplinary verdict, and then he did not. In fact, I was the one that informed Floyd that Cyril was not going to overturn it. He was actually going to uphold it. And Floyd was shocked, and he told me that Cyril promised them that he was. So I know that they hate him. And you ask yourself, what is it that will now bring Cyril together with Julius? From where I'm sitting, I know that Julius is driven by money and nothing else. Money and power. Political power gives him access to money. So everything that Julius is doing now has no principle. Julius is not thinking for himself. If you look at all these people, the days when the DA organizes a press conference, when the EFF organizes a press conference, now you see Pravin Gordhan, they all do it in a systematic way. It is like there's one master that is giving them an instruction that this is what is going to happen today. And that is where it is. So it's not a question of principle. Julius believes that he can instruct leaders of the ANC and they will do as he says. That's why he's instructing Cyril Ramaphosa now, because I would then think that they have the same master.
Okay, but let's latch on to that analogy in terms of a puppeteer essentially orchestrating or choreographing the whole movement between what the DA, the EFF, and all the Zuma detractors do. Pravin made it a point to throw out that allegation of, in terms of a regime change, that their roadshow was intended to meet, have clandestine meetings about a regime change. Just your response to that.
Well, first of all, just to turn on your last question, it should not surprise us in South Africa why the Gupta family would be persecuted. If you enter a space, Cindy, that for 100 years has been dominated by certain families, certain individuals, and there's a hierarchy in this country that has been set, and ESCOM has been giving the same tender, the same contract to one family for 40 years. You enter a media space that certain organizations and certain families have been running in this country for 50 years. You enter new dimensions of business, overthrowing a coup, a set, frame, door and gatekeepers that have dominated the industry for long. Of course you're going to be hated. you're going to be called names because you are destabilizing a preset, foundation of how to run this country. And particularly when you come into media space, because like Mr. Kunene say, you really shape perception. And if this station comes as a new narrative against an old narrative that is anti-black, that is anti-revolutionary, that's where the problem begins. And so I think as bad as it is, and you are seeing this white man once again insult and become vulgar and abusive to a young black woman in this country, and how often we've seen those scenes before, just shows us of the magnitude of hate that white people have in this country to clutch the economy, to clutch onto their media space, to clutch onto the ideology that they've perpetuated for long. And even our members who have now become leaders in the ANC are party to that.
Yeah, sorry, Susa, just to, earlier on you linked that to the incitement with Pravin Gordhan referring to the ANN7 reporter, singling her out in a room full of other journalists to say, do you have a question? And these are young people that we're dealing with. And of course she felt intimidated and didn't say anything. And only afterwards when the opportunity presented itself and Pravin was cordial enough to engage with them, they had a little bit of a chat. But the point I want to make, can you link it then, considering that SA, or Save SA was there as well, that this was an insinuation, or rather an incitement of the violence that we've seen against our reporters in Cape Town?
There's something here. Just, I'm trying to be careful here. There's obviously, I'm not coming here to represent the evil white capital. I'm sorry that I look like...
I'm sorry that you even feel that
But that's fair. No, that's okay.
Yeah.
I'm here as an analyst, and all I'm going to just say is this. What we're concerned about at this point is we're in a very fractious state. Now, a lot of the feelings here are feelings elsewhere. And what we're seeing now is an environment in which it's becoming toxic. We're mixing personal between political. And what you're seeing very clearly, not just here in South Africa, but you're seeing it in the United States, and you can see it in the UK. And this toxic environment is being felt all across the board. Now, when the press says something I like, then they're on my side. When they say something else, it's another way. So let me say there was this issue about press and the apartheid. The apartheid hated the press, because the press and the worldwide press truly hated them. Now, there was a certain element of the press that they controlled, but a lot of press they didn't control. But when you take a look at Trump, he hates the press too. When the press doesn't go your way, we hate them. And one of the problems that's happening in this toxic environment is it's no longer that we disagree on policy. Now we're actually learning to hate one another. Now the problem is that we are now creating an environment of uncertainty. Now that uncertainty is hurting us all very badly.
Yeah, we all got to come out, I'm sure, with war scars, but nonetheless, so we do have other developing stories. The DA has filed court papers interdicting the swearing in of new ministers after President Jacob Zuma's cabinet reshuffle. The opposition party says it reserves the right to request a review of the cabinet reshuffle. The DA stated in its papers that the president must prove to the court that it was a logical decision to fire Pravin Gordhan as finance minister. And the Democratic Alliance proceeded to complain about Social Development Minister Bathabile Dlamini over the SASSA social grant debacle. However, the judge highlighted that the court would be overreaching to intervene. The DA responded that the courts cannot turn a blind eye to injustice.
All of us must gather together in the city of Johannesburg to march to the Tuli House, to call on all the ANC and the MPs to join in this action to remove Jacobs. These are extraordinary times, and we need to stand together beyond party colors, party jackets. So in essence, I'm saying that today is about moving that motion, putting an urgent interdict into court so that we stop this mad treasonous actions of signing in ministers. Thirdly, that all of us gather at the Tuli House, gather in Johannesburg, to call on the ANC, to call on all political formations that Zuma must be removed. The RAND has reacted in a manner, confirms our case that the actions by the president are irrational. And despite the provision about prerogative, this will plunge our economy into a very difficult space. I have no remarks for Malusi Gigaba in this instance, because I think it's wrong anyways to remove Minister Pravin Gordhan. The irony of South Africa is that if you do your job, you get removed. If you don't do your job like Bathabile Dlamini, you don't get removed. This is the irony that we are dealing with. And the difficulties is that when you have leadership that is not economically literate, as Jacob Zuma is, that fails to understand economic consequences, these are the natural effects of it.
And these are the arguments of the state attorney proving that the DA's application was baseless. The president is not required to give reasons for cabinet appointments, and the judge does not have power to say whether Jacob Zuma made a good decision or not. And the DA must prove that Zuma was bribed by the Gupta family, otherwise they have no case. And there are no legitimate concerns about the currency in the DA's application. It's all about order. And speaking for the first time after being sacked, Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan launched a scathing attack on his detractors, and using his farewell speech to defend his conduct and display the Treasury's track record. The minister, with his deputy, also went on to launch a tirade of allegations. And here's the report drawn by Gordhan at the press briefing. He says that he was only made aware of his sacking via the media. He dismissed the intelligence report cited as the reason for his roadshow being cancelled. He lashed out at state arms manufacturer Danao for approaching the court against Treasury. He raised the state of capture report to say that state institutions are vulnerable and under threat. Gordhan also reiterated insinuations that his deputy, Mcebisi Jonas, was offered a bag of money. He went on to claim that the sacking was preceded by malicious attacks over the last 15 months. And, of course, we do have our expert panelists who are so graceful enough to stay with us. We have Professor Beru Hanyani, political analyst and professor at the Northwest University, Kunene, businessman and socialite, Siso Mahlangu, resident political analyst, and Professor Keith Engel. He is the CEO of the SA Institute of Tax Professionals. And you at home, you're most welcome to join us. The lines are always open. We're just talking about inciting unnecessary violence and, evoking the sense of panic and fear that this country has essentially gone up in flames. What do you make of this over-reliance on the judicial process to always intervene? Now there is a process of trying to interdict the swearing in of new ministers. I don't get it. Am I missing something?
May I just Professor, please. I think one of the concerns that we're having here really is the power balance right here. One of the problems, what you're hearing, the frustration of both of them, is that a lot of people are feeling on the outside. The way this democracy has worked is that when you're inside, you have all the power. When you're on the outside, you're sitting on the sidelines. What you're hearing both of them have felt is they feel they've been on the sidelines for quite some time, which now is bringing them back to 94. Now what you're hearing the other group saying is we're on the sidelines. And that's creating a certain fractiousness. And what you're hearing, again, what you heard earlier from Mainani, again, once again, there's a real anger that is growing. And one of the problems that you're getting to about the judiciary is the balance of our democracy isn't right. So the insiders take all. The other side feels completely frustrated, so we go to violence, we go to courts, we go to other things. One of the things we have to look at is the way our Constitution is working in order to have a balance so that both people feel they have some power.
I just think that this issue of incitement, the President and I think the government needs to take it very seriously. Julius went on to Al Jazeera and said they will remove Zuma through a barrel of a gun. And he has gone on many other occasions saying that Zuma must be removed. And you hear the DA now saying that Zuma must be removed. This is a democratically elected president. And I think that action needs to be taken. Because if you say you will remove a sitting president through the barrel of a gun, then we need to look at the law and the Constitution and say, what are the legal implications of what you are saying? Because then you are basically inciting people, you are telling people, take up arms and fight and remove this president. So it could easily start a civil war. So I think that the president and his cabinet need to look deeper into this and take action on those who incite the public on taking action or removing the president without democratic means.
Just before we continue, I believe we do have a news just in. Breaking news, the DA's bid to interdict the swearing in of new ministers has been dismissed, and the opposition sought to review President Jacob Zuma's reshuffle. And this is what the overreaching of the judiciary, what the courts can and cannot do, and the state attorney outlining the fact that the president doesn't necessarily need to give reasons for a cabinet appointment. We uphold the Constitution, we laud the Constitution only when it's applicable to certain agendas that we're driving. Is this what's playing out?
They're basically turning courts into a government. Now, government can make decisions. The president can make decisions. Every executive decision that is taken must be taken to the courts. The courts must review it. We cannot run a country like that. And I'm happy that the court didn't even want to listen to it. You know, a clever man once said that if you want different results, you need to start doing things differently. But this thing does not really gel with the DA and the EFF with this motion of no confidence. They keep going, and they are trying to play psychologically on the minds of ANC MPs, but to also try and take advantage of the dissatisfaction within the ANC and see if it will not work in their favor. And I hope that ANC MPs will not allow history to write them during their time having removed the president because of opposition. If the ANC wants to act, the ANC must take its own initiative. But why would you want to remove a president that is saying, let us implement radical economic and social transformation. Let us take land back to our people. Let us come together as black political parties and change the constitution so that it can benefit us. How do you want to remove such a president? And I just want to talk briefly about the issue of Pravin, because you know, Cindy, Pravin has been portrayed as a very holy, clean cow that does not even go to the toilet. However, there's an online newspaper that wrote a story where it was alleged that Pravin paid himself, whilst he was the minister at Treasury, paid himself 10 to 11 million rands of the military veterans pension fund, or NSF.
Yeah, but can I be very careful,
yes,
just as a disclaimer that your views are not the views of this program.
It's an allegation. Pravin was given a chance to respond. However, he has not answered the two basic questions. This man who is so moral, did you take the money or did you not take the money?
I do apologize. We do have breaking news, and I report Chelsea Lotz is standing by. Thanks so much, Chelsea. Of course, we've heard now that the DA's bid to interdict the swearing in of new ministers has essentially been dismissed, and the opposition who sought to review President Jacob Zuma's reshuffle have failed. What is the reaction from the Democratic Alliance?
Good day, and good evening to the viewers at home. Indeed, the DA is absolutely dismayed that their application has failed. Now, the court the judge did say that, at present, everything in regards to this situation that the president has done is 100% constitutional. Even though they did attempt to argue certain parts of the Constitution, trying to argue that certain parts of the appointment of cabinet ministers was unconstitutional. It was found to be completely unfounded allegations. The defense attorney did state that, a court case cannot be based on conspiracy theories. It cannot be based on assumptions. It cannot be based on sensationalism. And the judge did concede that at the end of the day, it has to be based on facts. So far, factually, the president has been completely within his right, as mentioned by the judge, to hire and fire ministers without explanation. Another interesting point that came up was that, in fact, that the ministers, the new cabinet ministers come into effect as to when the president makes the decision. So therefore, the swearing in itself is more of a tradition rather than an actual decision being made. So therefore, the attempt from the DA to stall the swearing in was unsuccessful because it cannot be stalled. Once the president makes the decision, it is put into power immediately. So that is what it says in the Constitution. So, of course, the DA is absolutely disappointed that their application failed.
Chelsea, so what did the court say with regards to the objection of the swearing in of the ministers, primarily in what had seemed to be the greatest heads of argument by the DA, that with Malusi Gigaba now being in the finance minister, he's essentially going to open up the purse strings and we're going to see looting of resources. What was the court's response?
The court did rule that it is completely within the president's mandate to hire and fire ministers without explanation. And that, again, as mentioned, it is completely constitutional. So, again, on that basis, there's no factual reason of why those ministers should not have been placed in those positions. The judge also stated that, it is not the court's prerogative to preemptively decide whether something is good or bad. At the moment, the new cabinet ministers in those positions have not served their terms yet. They have not proven themselves as incompetent. They have not done anything yet to make us believe that they cannot carry out their positions as should be done. So therefore, again, the court has kind of upheld that statement that, they are not there to make preemptive judgments on individuals.
Sorry to interrupt you. And of course, we've always had this debate around the protection of erstwhile Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan, that if he's rattled or made uncomfortable, that the currency would be affected. What did the court say in this regard?
The judge did mention that, and actually the defense attorney as well mentioned that, only what is within the actual court application can be argued in court. So because there wasn't actually any extensive argument in the court application about the inflation or deflation of the rand, due to that, it means that the judge denied it as being a point that can be ordered or even argued in court, saying that, it's not a valid point. And in fact, the judge in the end ruled that, there were no actual substantial facts that were brought forward by the DA, and that is why the application failed.
And on the allegation about Zuma and the Gupta family?
The judge ruled that, again, these are unsubstantive claims. The defense attorney stated that, at the end of the day, these are conspiracy theories. Unless the DA is able to prove their implied theory that the president was somehow bribed or blackmailed by the Guptas, then they actually have no argument for that in court or otherwise. Until it is actually proven, it stands as a conspiracy theory.
All right, what is the Democratic Alliance likely to do next, if anything?
They have stated that for them it is not the end, that they will be proceeding with another court application next week, and that they will continue their fight against this cabinet reshuffle.
All right, Chelsea Lotz, our reporter, ANN7 reporter, giving us an update on the DA's case being dismissed to interdict the swearing in of ministers, which is scheduled for 18:30, and that would be 6:30 Central African time. Just your reaction, Sfiso?
Well, I do believe that the first thing South Africa must do, and politicians must do, and also political parties must do, is to appreciate and respect the electorate. South Africans are often used when political parties want votes, and they campaign us, and everybody says, we'll do this and that. And when a particular group of people nominate their leader and mandate them to represent them in parliament, and another opposition parties attempts to overthrow them. According to the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, the voters' roll happens every 5 years, and every individual in this country has an opportunity to mandate their political party to represent them at the National Assembly. It is unjust for me to appoint Freedom Front Plus as my leaders, and then Mr. Kunene decides 2 months later or 2 years later that he is unsatisfied with my party, Freedom Front Plus, and attempts to overthrow them. They must respect the electorate. That's how democracy works. If you are unhappy with a particular party and you are the opposition, you wait your tenure. That's the democracy. After 5 years, you campaign as everybody else does, and then hope and pray that you get nominated, that they vote for you. When you get those votes, they mandate you to parliament. But if you don't have the necessary vote, you don't have the muscle, you shouldn't want to run false politics by overthrowing other parties or taking away from that party's right to exercise their constitutional right and represent the masses that took them to parliament in the first place. It's unfair.
Can the DA, though, sustain this? Because we heard from Chelsea Lotz, our reporter, that they say this is not the end for them. They're going to, I don't know what other court action they can take, because it's almost half an hour before the
Whether
election.
they agree with the cabinet positions or not, it's the president's prerogative. It is what it is. It is very hard to tell a president they can't choose who they want to choose anywhere in the world. So you may not like that, but of course, why would the DA like that? I mean, they're fighting opposition politics. So they knew they were going to lose that going in, but one of the battles that's going on is that politics is 24/7, and it's 24/7. We're fighting the battle of narratives, and they've scored the points they wanted to score. They knew they were going to lose, but they fought the battle. Do we want our courts used in that way? Well, unfortunately, as I said right now, the way our democracy is spilling out is it's moving into the wrong places, but everybody's doing it. It's a game open for jam.
But I mean, if they were going to lose, you're saying that, you know, that at least they attempted the battle, and I suppose to keep all these other allegations hovering in the public domain, and the fact about the Zuma, it's been called Zupta, and, you know, concerns about the currency, etc.
The one thing they managed to do, though, was create some necessary PR among DA voters, and they might get a headline sometime over the weekend. And of course, in politics, you'd do anything to get some media coverage, and that's often what it's about. But this also states the true fact of the separation of powers. It would have been a cold day in this country if, of course, the courts would have told the president not to appoint whom he wanted to appoint, because then the judiciary would be saying they are higher than the executive. And if the executive is higher than the legislature, and the legislature claims that it's higher than the judiciary, then you don't have a state. The judiciary, the executive, and the legislature are all equal, but they perform different tasks in a constitutional democracy, and none of them should assume superiority. And of course, yes, it is the president, the head of state, who appoints the Chief Justice. But the Chief Justice then cannot say he is below or even higher than the President. So separation of powers is very important. But I'm glad here that the courts have seen that. If the people mandate you to represent them in Parliament, it's a 5-year relationship, Cindy. It's a 5-year marriage. So you need to choose wisely. If he says he'll treat you well, you need to think well. It's a 5-year relationship. You don't break in the middle of it and say, well, we think the president you appointed, you know, last year or last month must fall, so you can elect me. It's a 5-year contract.
Yeah, how effective has the DA's strategy been to use the judiciary in proving a point? We know, of course, with the landmark ruling on Nkandla, Constitutional Court, etc., that had essentially almost propelled the necessity to go to court. How successful do you think the strategy has been so far?
Yeah, look, like I said, the DA wants to use the courts as a parallel government. However, they have won some cases, and they have gotten some mileage, PR out of it. But as Spiso says, at times it's just to sell what they have, so that you know, they can get their members together, they can score some points, get a front page. But yeah, the courts have, in some instances, have favored the DA or the opposition. You know, the courts are independent; we cannot question them. But I want to talk about the issue of the currency that you wanted to raise. Whenever a minister of finance or a Reserve Bank governor is appointed in any country, the currency will have some issues. When Trevor Manuel was appointed, our rand took a dive. Nelson Mandela was called all sorts of names for having appointed him, until such time that he was friends with them. When Pravin Gordhan was appointed the first time, the rand took a dive. So it is not a new thing that the rand would take a dive when the finance minister is being sacked. It happens, and the rand recovers, and some markets, some businesses benefit. The mining industry benefits. The price of gold does well for them. They make more money. They're able to pay their salaries. They're able to sustain their businesses. However, one wouldn't encourage or condone the rand falling, but executive decisions have to be made. And if they are going to affect the rand, that's part of the business. But it will recover, it will come back. It has done so many times. So our people must not be held ransom to the issue that when one man or two men are removed from cabinet, then there's chaos in the country.
It's
there
a
is
real
no
concern.
chaos.
Yeah,
yes.
no, but I mean, for many of us, in the sense that the economy is constrained and you're pressed in terms of your disposable income, etc., that these are genuine concerns. So if the court then says, you know, it just gives you a sense of relief that ultimately, as you're saying, that it's not about the personality, it's about the institution and policies.
But, you know, Cindy, to be ostentatious about it and ask, why hasn't Ms. Juma Peterson held a press conference today? Because she got sacked. So why didn't she call a presser and call members and slur and throw her toys out of the court? And why is then Mcebisi Jonas able to do the same? That are we saying as a nation that Mcebisi's role is higher than anybody? Are there prefects among the ministers, or are other ministers higher than others because they happen to control treasury? I don't think the Minister of Home Affairs is less than any other. And for that matter, we shouldn't super mega, aka any minister higher than another. I think if your time is in, one should be humbled with the possibility to come and serve the nation. And if your time is up, people should really be graceful about it. But to come and then incite some violence, as I heard Mr. Gordhan to have said, you know, mobilize and start things. And right after that press conference with Mr. Zwelinze Mavavi and Sipho Pichana, you know, go out and say, we're going to take this country and we'll bring the bear to its knees. Seems like when you are called to exit, then you want to bring the president and the country to its knees because you are called to leave. Are you irreplaceable, Mr. Gordhan? And I think as a country, moving on, and it should be a lesson to any political party and any government in the world, that never to work with ministers who assume that they are irreplaceable. And we must neglect people who seem to have a superpower notion among themselves. I think in any position of leadership, people should be driven by humility as opposed to egocentria and irreplaceism. I think that's the benefit that we'll receive from African politics.
Is it a case of personality? Maybe some ministers are camera shy, and maybe Pravin just is one of those that if he's got a burning issue he'd like to share with the public. I don't know how you see it, Professor.
I think that, well, look, ministers of finance, even though all ministers are equal, around the world, the guy who's got the money is more equal than the others. It's not anything to do with Gordhan, it's nothing to do with Manuel, but the guy who has the money tends to have more power. And in the issue... Yeah, well, oh, okay. So the real issue here is now when we're looking about capital and we're looking about foreign investment, the bottom line is business likes certainty and they like stability. When you start seeing that stability jeopardized, then you're going to have a problem. Now, I think oddly enough, I heard something from one economist today who said, look, if the noise settles down, it'll sound similar to what you're saying. That bottom line is that if we can just get some calm, that it would be better off. That was kind of interesting, but it shows you the way business works. When there is a change, there can be some uncertainty. In this case, there's a narrative, and that narrative is causing that additional level of uncertainty. But they will, once the change is over, if it settles down, that's fine. The real challenge is for the new Minister of Finance. The new Minister of Finance, does he want to win over the confidence of that capital or not? That's going to be really the question. And if he doesn't win it over, well, then there's going to be a problem on that side. Maybe for the other people, they'll be happier about it. But business is very skittish, especially at this time where the global economy is at.
All right, just very briefly, Kenny, we have to go.
Yes, I think the attitude of Pravin was inspired by the fact that he was lobbied by the banks to come in. And he was treated as this holier-than-thou character and minister. And Zizi Kodwa spoke against personalizing ministerial positions, and but to talk principle. However, in conclusion, what I want to say is that the ANC is facing a very difficult time at the moment. And the best thing that the ANC must do is to come together based on principle, not personalities, and say, how do we move forward from here? Because it is not the president's appointment that is causing havoc in the country. It is these press conferences, these marches to courts that are causing uncertainties to the business world. Because the investors out there are saying there are marches, there are press conferences, there is unhappiness. But when you look at the caliber of the ministers that have been appointed, they, in their own right, deserve to be where they are. It's a serious insult to Malusi Gigaba and Sfiso Buthelezi that their appointment is embroiled in so much controversy, as if they are not going to do better than Pravin and Jonas. It's a serious insult.
What do you think, Sfiso?
I think we must allow people to shine, and South Africans must allow people to have their day and prove themselves. Indeed, no one is irreplaceable. Some within the President Mbeki faction, out of his administration, felt that he was irreplaceable. Some even left and started their own party, which has subsequently died today. So I think it shows you that there is a trend where people think, if I'm not in charge, then I shall not follow. I think every leader must be a good follower. And in order to be a great leader, you must learn how to follow. And that's an example that I think many of our leaders need to learn. South Africans must dispel an idea that the best president is the one who just left or the one that is coming. I think we must be able to remove ourselves from that ideology.
But Professor Engel, you seem to believe that, we're not created equal. Some are more equal than others, in your words. And in this case, the finance minister is much more important.
And before Professor answered, I'm overwhelmed by two professors and one socialite tonight.
And you are soon to be doctor.
Soon to be doctor, yes. Thanks. Yeah. The reality is, Professor, Pravin doesn't have the money, although I believe personally he does. But the state funds that he manages are not his money. Those are the assets of this country. They are my money, and I'm a taxpayer in this country. And he should have afforded himself the humility to say, I'm a servant of the people. And yes, the one who holds the money or the treasurer might be considered important because, if the rand drops, he might also become very manipulative because he controls the money and take up a coup and, work with Standard and Poor and Moody's and these other fake ratings agencies. I believe he is in a place of importance because he holds the treasury. But one must always remember that it's not his personal fund. It's not his money to dispense at will. He must, in humility, learn that he is designated to serve the nation. And these are taxes from hard-working South Africans.
Yeah.
He's a former
I'm just going to put this out to the floor. So any takers, you're most welcome to respond in the sense that the reference to the Gupta family saying they're essentially under this veneer, they're not seen in public, and he wanted to engage in public. I mean, is this a normal kind of invitation, if you will, that a finance minister would make, considering so many other businesses operate in not only in the media space but across various sectors? What do you think that gesture, or how can we interpret that gesture?
Yeah, you see, Pravin personalizes things. It's all about him. And this is what the spokesperson of the ANC was trying to say. If you are a minister, you represent an office of the minister. If you are the president, you represent an office of the president. So it is not about you. When you are being criticized for the portfolio that you hold, we are not necessarily criticizing you. We are criticizing the office that you hold. We might not have the same criticism once you have left that office. That is why nobody is criticizing Thabo Mbeki today, because he is not the president of the country. And the problem with Pravin is he personalizes it. He makes it about himself. That is why he can attack the ANN7, just like Julius did. And I think it's unfortunate. It's very much unfortunate.
Professor.
Yeah, thank you so much. No, look, I think unfortunately what we're hearing on this side is you feel very personal. Now, I think, you know, having worked with Pravin Gordhan, I think that he believes he's doing a good thing. I think a lot of other ANC people also feel they're doing a good thing.
Yeah, no, I don't think anybody discounts what he's done, under that
But the issue about the
leadership.
ratings agency really isn't about him. I mean, look, when it went from Gordhan to Nene, and I think Nene was a fine minister, I don't think there was the shakeup going on. I think the narrative around that story was fine. What you're seeing now is a battle of narratives, and the narratives are getting quite ugly. And that's getting quite tense. And unfortunately now the narratives, the businesses are involved in that well. And one thing business fears is uncertainty and change. They do not like change. But they also are not sure which way this is going, and part of the battle is those individual narratives that are going on. So, I mean, at the end of the day, a minister goes out, maybe he's not happy about it, but it's a question of what the country really needs. And it is our tax dollars at work. The question is where are our tax dollars going to go in the future? That's what our business is about. We only can pay so much. We need to have a private sector that's going to grow. Otherwise, we're going to keep paying more and more. That's a separate issue. The real issue is where do we go from here? Can we get to the level where we can come back in a policy way without the personal issues and come back together and agree? And the difficulty is there's been always two sides to the ANC, and now you're seeing one up and one down. And the battles have been going on for quite some time, up until now behind the scenes, but now it's open warfare.
For us to have growth, Professor, and I want to agree with you, but I think for us to have growth, we also need to empower as many disadvantaged black, colored, Indian, South Africans as possible. Because if wealth is spread amongst many people, there'll be job creations. We won't have to pay a lot of tax because people are now contributing. At the moment, less than 10% is contributing almost 90% of the tax. And that is where the problem is. And now the people that want the status quo do not want to understand this or accept this because it doesn't benefit them. And that is why the president is saying, for us to be able to grow the economy, for us to be able to create jobs, let us now implement a radical economic transformation so that young people, let us see the budget of treasury, 90% or 95% of the budget of the treasury going to black entrepreneurs, young people who come with ideas, who have business visions, so that they can be empowered. Let us say SAA, instead of having 95% or 98% of its spend going to white companies, let it be shared amongst the majority of our people. And this is what all these people, including Pravin, since Pravin took over, what has he done in terms of transformation of the economy to our people? Nothing. As you say, from Nene to him, there hasn't been any significant growth or anything of importance. So you ask yourself, why would the opposition and business love Soman so much, want to protect him so much, march for him so much? But the answer will come very, very soon.
Yeah, and you're touching on the black aspirations, and I think, Prof, you were also saying that true transformation will not happen with the inequality that we see. South Africa is amongst the most unequal societies in the world, and the poverty lines are just growing, the gap between rich and poor. That this is the debate that we should be having instead of the court cases you see of whether Zuma was bribed by Gupta, you know, and it's just regurgitation of it. It's a very smart electioneering campaign slogan that flows nicely, but a real concern is that people are saying they're not wanting to be captured by a certain group, in this case the Gupta family, as has been done by previous, and it's to be tested whether there is a real state capture, because we're not even there yet.
In the first place, the argument has always been, if you know what this family has done and you know of the fraudulent activities and behavior that they've committed, go to the SAPS and to the Hawks and lay a charge. And I think South Africa has been with bated breath waiting for someone to raise something against the Guptas. And not Mr. Malema to say, we are walking, don't trust that one. And that one, I tell you. But there's no tangible evidence to say this is what they have done. I think, number one, that has been the rhetoric in this country. But moving on, it should never have been about an individual. And that's why it is this media, this perpetuated left-wing media in this country that has been saying the reason that this reshuffling has happened is to get Brian into the treasury, and when Mr. Molefe is there, it is to empower the Gupta's projects and all of that. And it's not even about Brian. It's not even about any individual. It shouldn't be about a personality. Whoever it is in this country that can cut the strides of black people and give us free education and give us expropriation of land and allow black people to be partakers of this economy and drop from this 97% where white people still own this economy after 23 years. I say I'm looking for that person, not the personality to say, I want Brian or I want this one. Any leader who is appointed, but who can deliver, not just for us, but for our children and our grandchildren in this country, that is someone I think that the South Africans are calling upon.
Yeah, I mean, the question is a preamble to what we've seen in court now with the DA missing, or rather losing the court application to interdict the swearing in of ministers. And if you look at the arguments, it's usually around the protection of Pravin Gordhan, interference within Treasury. He himself, during his press briefing, was saying that why was he asked to interfere or intervene in the Oak Bay accounts closure of banks, and why has Danel all of a sudden gone to court? And he called it linking the dots. Are these perceived dots, or are they real dots? Any takes?
I think we're going back to a personal thing here. I think the real issue comes about two factions of the ANC. Now, I think both factions genuinely believe in transformation. I don't think anyone on the other side of ANC doesn't believe in that. If they didn't, they might be in a different party. We moved past the 94 period. There is a question of how, what's going to be effective and what's sustainable. Now, there was something I read back many, many years ago, Clemter Sumter's Fox book. And at the very end of his book, he had a little circle. And he said, you have growth. When you don't have growth, there's two things you have to have. You have to have distribution, you have to have growth. If you don't get growth, you're going to get more redistribution. If you get too much redistribution, you're going to start affecting the growth. We are now at a panel where we've stopped the growth. What happens when the growth is lacking, there's less money. When there's less cheese, the rats fight over it harder. That's our problem right now. There is less and less cheese, and the fight is getting ugly. The problem here is, to be fair to the ANC, they've always believed in transformation. I don't think anybody in 94 who took over this government didn't believe in transformation. It was a question of how. That ideological structure is now taking on a very personal kind of approach. One thing, though, that I must say that has been a real failure that has been going on for far too long is the lack of our education system. Our education system is in a really bad shape. And that is going to hurt us for a very, very long time. And that is going to prevent growth no matter how much you do and how much you try. Because the bottom line is, if you don't have that education, you haven't gotten the empowerment in the first place. And unfortunately, that has been lost.
The dots.
Yeah.
Pravin speaks the truth. There are dots. I think they could have connected the dots a long time ago. They have been in government. They have been talking about the Guptas for such a long time. And I have taken his advice, and I've put together my own dots, and I'm busy putting together my own dots. But I want to say what is happening to the Guptas is not an isolated case. Gayton and myself, however small we were when we started in 2010, when we opened clubs on top of Five-Star Hotel in Joburg and at another Five-Star Hotel in Cape Town, we were fought left, right, and center by white Cape Townians. Here, white business fought us to get us out so that a white man can take that business. We owned a mine in this country where we're shareholders and executives. even at that, we were fought so bad, there was so much controversy in the media, we had to pull out of that mine so that people don't lose their jobs. So now, we have just started an online newspaper. One newspaper went for me, and another online newspaper went for me. Why? Because they don't want you to play in the space of the media, where they monopolize the industry, whether it's mining, whether it's telecommunications. So we were so small, but we were fought left, right, and center. The owners were forced to do a deal with us and get us out. And this is how they are. So imagine, if we're so small, the Guptas being so big, they will be fought left, right, and center. But I want to conclude by saying, President Jacob Zuma, we were very much impatient. Bravo to you. You took your time. You are a strategist. You knew what you were doing. And at long last, this cabinet has been reshuffled. And we are in support of this reshuffle. We are in support of the young people that we have put in there. We know that they have energy. Malusi Gigaba has shown throughout the departments that he has been through that he excels wherever he goes. Razmataz has showed he has pushed transformation in the sports department, even with those codes that are more wide dominated like rugby, but he has come in, pushed a transformation. And I think that you have made the right decision. Nobody must tell you otherwise. Thank you very much.
And besides the finance minister and his deputy, the former, being disgruntled, and nobody, it's not nice being fired. I've been there myself at some point in my career. And, you know, using the platform to vent and also explain their progress, etc., that this new cabinet needs to be afforded the opportunity to prove themselves.
Yes.
And to, just for the stability, so we quickly get over this hurdle and let the dust settle and focus on essentially getting, putting shoulder to the ground.
Let my money chill, let Godan chill, Vavi, let them chill. Let them give the other guys a chance. Let them chill, they will see, there will be no problems, investors will be coming, there are no issues. My business partner traveled last week and the past 2 weeks, meeting with some of the investors that we do business with all over the world. Some from your country, in Australia, he met them in Hong Kong. And they are saying, South Africa is an investment destination. We just want your president to make a decision. If he's going to reshuffle, let him reshuffle so that we can go on with business. But if there is reshuffle, no reshuffle, then there's that's uncertainty. But once the president has made a decision, there is no uncertainty that is there. The people who are marching and going to courts and organizing press conferences, insulting the president and the people that he has appointed, those are the people that are causing uncertainty amongst investors overseas.
We'll just wrap it up very briefly, as we saw, and Professor Engel.
I do hope that as the incumbent Minister of Finance, Mr. Melusi Gigaba, enters, and as he is sworn in tonight, that he'll receive the support he deserves, and that the handover and transition process will be as it should be for the benefit of all South Africans. And I think if you are called to serve, it's not your company. You didn't found South Africa, though some try and really say they want to save it. But no one founded South Africa. Not a single individual can claim that right. That the handover process will be good, and that transition and all documentations that are needed to allow him the start that he needs. And not just Mr. Gigaba, all other ministers who take over these positions, so that we might destabilize the country for the growth of our economy, for the emancipation of our welfare, and to the satisfaction and to the happiness of our children.
Okay, last words for you, Professor Engel.
Yes, I think really we're now at a very difficult stage because the trust is gone. And once in a relationship the trust is gone, it is very hard to recover it. I think the real issue is to get the economy back on track. The question is foreign investment. Do we want it or not? Now, if you want foreign investment, they need to make money, and they're happy to share some of it. The bottom line is it's a mutual thing. Every business deal is a mutual thing. They don't care who it's with as long as it's made, and there is some certainty in that. The problem that we're having here is with all this noise and all the chaos, and we're not sure where we're going. What does this mean? So when we talk about policy, unfortunately, let me go back to that one more time. We don't know what all of this policy means. We're so busy having a fight about personalities now that you're just watching like you're coming to a room of a broken family. And right now it is a very broken family. And that's all I can say.
Yeah, so we need counseling, we need therapy, we need roundtables, we need a TRC.
Closing quote, I quote Mr. Julius Nyerere, be careful of a black man who is beloved by whites.
Yes.
Being colonized, not emancipated in
And
the
to
mind.
all ANC members out there, the one question that you must ask yourself is, if opposition loves, applauds a minister, a leader in the ANC, if white monopoly capital applauds and celebrate a minister of the ANC-led government or leader, ask yourself, what is he doing right for them and what is he not doing right for you?
We're going to have to leave it there. Thanks indeed, gentlemen. I really appreciated the discussion. That's Professor Keith Engel, CEO of the South African Institute of Taxation, Sfiso Mahlango's resident ANN7 political analyst, and Kenny Kunene, socialite and businessman. Thank you so much for joining us. And you at home, we appreciate your viewing. We're back after this, so do stay with ANN7.